Rawteur. A24's best movies aren't the weirdest ones or even the scariest ones. They're the ones based on a true story. And that's exactly why they want the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. Now, I know that sounds strange. Leatherface isn't usually the first thing people think of when they hear prestige cinema. But hang on, because the truth behind why A24 is circling this franchise is bigger than one horror reboot. Here's the part that most people reporting on this story are skipping over. A24 already has a track record. Some of their highest rated, most award nominated films come from true stories. Rawteur, Sing Sing, The Zone of Interest, Skin, Zola. These films didn't just get strong reviews. Some of them hit the 90s on Rotten Tomatoes. You know how I feel about Rotten Tomatoes, but we'll use them going forward for this video. Some have won Oscars, and in the case of Rawteur, even pulled an A- cinema score. Now that's the highest grade A24's ever had on a cinema score. So why does that matter for Texas Chainsaw Massacre? Well, it's because Leatherface has always been marketed as if he was real. See, based on a true story wasn't just a tagline, it was part of the franchise's DNA. And the way A24 works, that's exactly the kind of hook they know how to exploit. If you want to understand why A24's been circling Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you've got to look at their track record with true stories. I mean, start with Rawteur. This was based on a real mission in Ramadi, Iraq, and co-directed by an actual Navy SEAL who was there. Critics gave it 93% on Rotten Tomatoes, audiences matched it at 93%. And the cinema score, which is basically opening night audiences giving the film a grade, those ratings came in at an A-. I mean, that's the highest grade, as I said, A24 has ever received from CinemaScore. Now, for context, most of their films don't even score a cinema score at all, and that's because mainstream crowds usually walk out a bit divided. You know, their movies are usually polarizing. But this one proved that a true life war story could break through. Now, compare that to Skin, another true story, a drama about a neo-Nazi trying to leave the white supremacist movement. Critics gave it 76, audiences an 82%. Not a huge box office hit, but it won a prize at Toronto. And that festival prestige, they matter for A24's brand. Then there's Zola. You probably remember that, you know, from the viral Twitter thread that they turned into a movie. Critics loved it, 88% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it racked up Independent Spirit Awards and an audience score that kind of dipped a little, but that didn't stop the film from carving out a cultural footprint. Now, on the higher end, The Zone of Interest, which was inspired by real events at Auschwitz, that scored 93% at Rotten Tomatoes and won the Grand Prix at Cannes, and 2 Oscars, including Best International Feature. Sing Sing, about a prison theater program, came in at 97% from the critics and 97% also from the audience, with Coleman Domingo winning big on the on the award circuit. Ooh, I need some water. Take a second to clap the like button. It helps me a lot and keeps future updates on your homepage first. And of course, not all of their true story films landed. The Adderall Diaries bombed with critics at 26%, but 5 out of 6 of these true story films land in the 80s to 90s. That's not a coincidence, it's a pretty strong pattern. And here's one thing to keep in mind. Those movies didn't just make critics happy, they shaped A24's entire reputation. Which brings us to the real question. Why do true stories work so well for A24? I mean, part of it is simple. Prestige. Critics and awards voters have always gravitated to films that feel rooted in reality. There's this built-in credibility when a movie is based on actual events. Hollywood has known it forever. I mean, just look at the Oscars race. Almost every year, the fact-based dramas have a head start. As one analyst put it, truth is stranger than fiction, and voters buy into that. But it's more than just trophies. True stories give audiences a hook, and A24 knows this. So when they marketed The Farewell, the tagline wasn't some vague poetic line, it was blunt, based on an actual lie. Now with Zola, they leaned all the way into the wild fact that it started as a Twitter thread. Those choices weren't accidents. They were selling the authenticity as part of the entertainment. And here's where the pattern gets even sharper. A24's true story films don't always crush at the box office, but they always outperform their fictional experiments when it comes to prestige. Compare it like this. Hereditary made more money, around $80 million worldwide, but zero Oscar love. The Zone of Interest made less than 80 million, but it walked away with the Grand Prix at Cannes and 2 Academy Awards. One got cash, the other got cultural weight. A24 thrives on the second. That's why this isn't about whether a movie is horror, drama, or comedy. It's about whether it's anchored in something audiences can feel is true. And if you think about it, doesn't that sound exactly like the hook Texas Chainsaw Massacre has been selling for 50 years, right? The Texas Chainsaw Massacre has carried the label based on a true story this entire time. And in a way, that was genius marketing, because the truth is, it wasn't exactly based on a true story, right? The movie's closest real-life inspiration was Ed Gein. He wasn't in Texas and he didn't use a chainsaw, but in the 1950s, he did something so grotesque that it warped pop culture forever. He dug up bodies, made masks and furniture out of human skin, and basically lived in a house of horrors. His crimes inspired not just Leatherface, but also Norman Bates in Psycho and Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs. And just to show how much that fascination still lingers, Netflix literally just dropped a trailer for a new series about Ed Gein starring Charlie Hunnam. That alone is enough proof that all of these years later, people can't stop retelling this story. Now, Tobe Hooper, who directed the original in 1974, admitted later that most of the story was fictional. 5 kids on a road trip, the cannibal family, the slaughterhouse stuff, it was all invented. But Leatherface's skin mask, that was straight from Ed Gein. And the famous opening narration, the film you're about to see is true, that was Hooper playing a trick. He said it was partly a response to Watergate in Vietnam, when nobody trusted the government. Basically, if the government could lie, why couldn't a horror movie lie too? The result was perfect. Audiences thought they were watching something ripped out of the headlines. Posters promised it was based on America's most bizarre crimes. And once that idea took hold, it didn't matter if it was true or not. People believed Leatherface was real. Here's the thing about Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's never really had a stable home. For 50 years, the rights have been tossed around like a bloody chainsaw at a backyard barbecue I wouldn't want to attend. Maybe you'd like to be there. No judgment. The original 1974 film was this scrappy, low-budget shocker distributed by a tiny company called Bryanston. It cost around $140,000 to make and earned over $30 million. It was a massive hit, but the rights, they were tied up in lawsuits almost immediately. In the 80s, Canon Films grabbed the sequel rights. That gave us Texas Chainsaw 2, which was Hooper's Gonzo follow-up, and like a lot of Canon stuff, it was wild but messy. And when Canon folded, the property shifted to New Line Cinema. New Line tried to turn the franchise into a slasher film with Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 in 1990, but it flopped. Then, Kim Henkel, one of the original creators, mounted his own reboot in the 90s with Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation. That's the infamous one with Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger. Critics absolutely hated it, audiences skipped it, but somehow it still exists. Fast forward to 2003, Platinum Dunes and Michael Bay came in with a glossy remake. Critics groaned, but it made over $100 million. And that's the high point for the franchise financially. But it didn't last. The prequel in 2006 came and went. Then Lionsgate took a turn in the 2010s with Texas Chainsaw 3D and Leatherface. Both were critical disasters, and most recently, Legendary got the rights and dropped the 2022 version on Netflix. Again, lots of hype, lots of gore, but Rotten Tomatoes score of 31%. I didn't mean to rhyme there. So, here we are. Every studio tries to reboot Leatherface. Every studio trips on the chainsaw. Which brings us to today, a full-on bidding war. Reports say at least 8 pitches were on the table. Even names like Jordan Peele and Oz Perkins circled the property. But the frontrunner now is A24. Not only for new films, but for a prestige TV series. Let's just say the horror community is split right down the middle. On one side, you've got excitement. Tweets like, "Prestige Leatherface? Finally, A24 will do him justice." Fans who love A24's horror track record, like Hereditary, The Witch, Midsommar, are ready to see what happens when you give Leatherface that kind of attention, right? Some are even hoping this could be the film that finally revives the franchise after decades of misfires. But on the other side, you've got pure skepticism. Posts saying A24 Prestige TV? Pass. No thanks. Then you have memes imagining Leatherface brooding about trauma instead of revving a chainsaw. I mean, one Reddit comment summed it up perfectly. Chainsaw isn't meant to be prestige. It's supposed to be raw, sweaty, nasty. If they turn it into art house horror, it's not Chainsaw anymore. And honestly, they've got a point. The original worked because it felt like something you weren't supposed to watch. It was grimy. It was relentless. Right? A24, on the other hand, is known for horror with metaphors, immaculate cinematography, and slow burn pacing. That clash is why the reactions are so strong. Some people think A24's involvement guarantees a fresh, terrifying take. Others think it guarantees Leatherface will be reading poetry under mood lighting. But take a step back for a second, as we love to do here. Now, whether fans are for it or against it, the fact that A24 is even in the bidding war tells you something bigger about who they've become. This isn't the same scrappy indie distributor anymore. This is a studio making franchise plays. A24 isn't just buying a horror franchise, they're changing who they are. Remember, this is the studio that built its reputation on outsider films, movies like Moonlight, The Witch, and Everything Everywhere. For years, they didn't touch big IPs. They were the indie darling, the cool kid who didn't care about franchises. But look at them now. They've got their own merch line, a podcast, a book imprint, even a membership club. Fans wear A24 hats like they're a fashion label. The company's been compared to LVMH. Not just a studio, but a lifestyle brand. And with that growth comes ambition. They've partnered with Apple, they've moved into TV with Euphoria and Beef, they've picked up awards hardware that most indie distributors could only dream about. And now they're circling a legacy franchise, a franchise that's been mishandled for decades. Yes, but one that still has cultural weight. This is the irony. Texas Chainsaw Massacre started as grimy outsider cinema. Banned in countries, rejected by critics, worshipped by fans. Now it's a pawn in a Hollywood bidding war. And the company leading that war is the one that used to stand against all of this. And yet, A24's best movies really are based on a true story. The numbers prove it. Critics, audiences, and awards keep showing up for those projects. And when you put that track record next to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, suddenly this whole bidding war makes a lot more sense. Leatherface was never real in the way the posters claimed, but the illusion of truth has been baked into this franchise since 1974. And A24 knows exactly how to sell that kind of story. The question is, can they do it without losing what makes Texas Chainsaw matter? Because for some fans, the grime, the chaos, the feeling that you're watching something you're not supposed to see, that's the real story. Prestige polish could kill that, or it could reinvent it for a new generation. So I'll throw it to you. If A24 does take over Texas Chainsaw Massacre, do you think they can balance that raw grindhouse energy with their prestige formula? Or is Leatherface doomed to become just another art house experiment? Drop your thoughts below, and if you want more industry stories like this, check out this video right here.